thing I love about comedy the most is it's really about being honest, and it's about being present. And if you're in the moment, if something happens actually causes you a moment of embarrassment or surprise or interrupts you, and it genuinely happens, people will laugh. And if you fake it, they won't, or they'll pretend to laugh. But when it's really funny, you know it. I say comedy floats, tragedy sinks. You want to get actors to understand the float part. I think the hardest thing with actors is to find the balance between being honest, being believable, really committing to your dilemma and trying to play that situation, and at the same time having an ear for the lightness in comedy, the stakes in comedy, so that in the end, as desperate as it gets, even when it's really dark comedy, you come out okay at the end, so we don't dip into a tragic feeling or a melodramatic feeling, and in the end people laugh rather than feel like, God, they're just mad and yelling at each other. My favorite directing experience was working on You Can't Take It With You by George Kaufman and Moss Hart. It was a big college production, my first big show in a huge theater in Boston, and the finale of the Act 2 is when, in this crazy household, two guys that are in the basement making fireworks come running upstairs just as the IRS arrives and the federal investigators arrive to say the fireworks are about to blow up, and everybody in the house starts running for cover as the fireworks go off. Now there's a lot of blocking, there's a lot of crazy characters, there's a ballerina, there's a drunk lady getting carried down the stairs, so there's a lot of physical action we had to block out. Plus the producers thought, let's do real pyro, because that's an experience our students rarely get, and you don't see it too often in a theater these days. So we hired two guys who do rock and roll shows, who do live fireworks inside closed-in theater spaces. And that it gave us a finale that just got a standing ovation, because as the actors started running around and the two guys came up from the basement saying the fireworks, actual fireworks went off, including rockets shooting across the stage and things exploding from backstage, and everybody on the cast couldn't believe it was actually happening with real explosives. So that was pretty remarkable. Favorite writer of comedy for film? I guess for the stage, Kaufman, George Kaufman. Feydeau writes French farce, just brilliant situations that get ridiculously absurd, but you couldn't think of one more surprise that could happen, and then something else happens, of course. Three or four most important things. Less is more. If it's important to the plot line, put it in, but don't throw extraneous gags in. That bothers me when I watch a show and someone just throws a rubber chicken in because they think it'll be funny, or they throw in a sight gag that doesn't really have to do with the situation. To me, it's all driven by what is actually happening between the characters. And I really think it's important not to try to be funny as actors. You got to have a sense of comedy. You have to understand why people are laughing, but typically, a situation's funny because people are miserable and desperately trying to get out of the problem that they're in. So how do they survive this situation? How do they get out of it? And so you have to stay really on task with that. And then you put the obstacles in the way and the surprises and the things, so that each time they have to find a fresh way of approaching it so that it doesn't feel stale or pushing for a laugh. Those are the things I try to steer away from. Build the dynamics. Look for ways to keep changing the dynamics so that it stays interesting. If it's been really loud, do something soft. In that middle of that fireworks thing we were talking about, right in the middle of the chaos, we added a breath moment where 20 people and everybody thought it was over, and they just went, ah, and then it started going again. So it's finding those little dynamic shifts is really important. That was the best piece of blocking I've ever done, I think. I had a friend who was a juggler and a gymnast who worked in circuses, and he said, well, I think I'll learn some mime because you can always make funny faces and fall down and people will always laugh. And I thought, it's a little more complicated than that, but falling down in funny faces often works. I think watching a monkey on the back of a pig, running around is funny. Little babies doing strange things, that will always make people laugh. Anything that's a surprise, anything that when you're not expecting it, and as long as no one gets really hurt. Honesty, keep it honest. Don't try to shoot for laughs. Don't try to make funny faces for no reason, Less is more. And yet you need huge amounts of excessive energy to play comedy, so making sure that the stakes are really high, that it matters a lot, that even sitting down in a chair can be made really funny and important. You can take you 5 minutes to open up a chair and suddenly you have a classic Charlie Chaplin routine. So, comedy is just watching how people survive, how they get through the day. And it can be as dark as Waiting for Godot or as ridiculous as a Feydeau farce.